Long before the first human footsteps pressed into soil, before cities, before tools, before even the idea of agriculture could exist, the earth was already rich with harvests that no human would ever gather. Entire landscapes once produced fruits, seeds, and plant structures so unfamiliar, so completely outside modern experience, that even imagining their taste or texture becomes almost impossible. These were not simply early versions of what we eat today. Many of them belong to evolutionary paths that ended millions of years ago, leaving behind only fragments in stone and silent imprints in ancient rock. There is something quietly profound about this loss, not because these plants were meant for us, but because they represent possibilities that never intersected with human history. Entire crops, in a sense, grew and vanished before anyone could cultivate them, study them, or even give them names and language. Their existence is known only through fossils, pollen grains, and the patient work of scientists piecing together a world that no longer exists. To understand these ancient crops, it helps to begin with the time when the concept of farming would have been meaningless. Over 400 million years ago, during the Devonian period, plants were only beginning to establish themselves on land. Early vegetation did not yet resemble forests as we know them. There were no flowers, no fruits in the modern sense, and no seeds as we understand them today. Instead, reproduction relied on spores, released into the air and carried by wind or water. Among these early land plants were groups like the rhiniophytes, simple in structure but revolutionary in impact. They had no leaves, no true roots, and no seeds, yet they transformed Earth's surface by stabilizing soils and altering atmospheric composition. These were not simply early versions of what we eat today. Many of them belonged to evolutionary paths that ended millions of years ago, leaving behind only fragments in stone and silent imprints in ancient rock. As millions of years passed, plant life became more complex. By the Carboniferous period, roughly 300 million years ago, vast swampy forests covered much of the planet. These were dominated by towering lycophytes, horsetails, and seed ferns, many of which no longer exist today. Some of these plants reached heights of over 30 meters, forming dense, humid ecosystems that would eventually give rise to the coal deposits we rely on today. Among these ancient giants were plants that produced structures resembling seeds, but unlike anything seen in modern agriculture. Among these early angiosperms were plants that produced fruits unlike anything seen today. Fossil evidence reveals structures that do not match any modern classification, suggesting entire lineages of fruit-bearing plants that have no living descendants. These fruits may have been adapted to specific pollinators or dispersers that also went extinct, creating tightly linked ecological relationships that could not survive environmental change. One example comes from fossil deposits that preserve detailed impressions of ancient fruits from the Cretaceous period. Some of these fruits show unusual shapes and internal structures, with seed arrangements that differ from any modern species. Researchers can analyze these fossils to infer aspects of their biology, such as how they may have been dispersed or what kinds of environments they thrived in. However, without living examples, much remains uncertain. Scientists often rely on comparisons with modern plants, but these comparisons can only go so far. In many cases, these ancient crops represent evolutionary experiments that did not continue into the present. The end of the Cretaceous period, marked by a mass extinction event around 66 million years ago, had a profound impact on plant life. While much attention is given to the extinction of dinosaurs, plant communities were also significantly affected. There's evidence suggesting that large areas of forest were destroyed and many plant species disappeared. In the aftermath, surviving plants began to repopulate the landscape. Flowering plants, in particular, expanded rapidly, taking advantage of the changed environment. This period of recovery shaped the ecosystems that would eventually support mammals, including early human ancestors. Yet even during this recovery, many ancient plant lineages did not return. Some of these may have included forms that produced edible or nutritionally valuable structures. Their disappearance represents a permanent loss of biological diversity, including potential food sources that never became part of any human diet. As time moved forward into the Paleogene and Neogene periods, plant life continued to evolve alongside changing climates. Grasslands began to spread, giving rise to the ancestors of modern cereal crops like wheat and rice. These plants would eventually become central to human agriculture, but their dominance is relatively recent in geological terms. Before grasses became widespread, other plant groups may have played similar ecological roles. Some extinct plants produced seed-like structures in large quantities, potentially forming dense ground cover. However, their biology differed in key ways, such as their reproductive cycles or nutritional composition, which may have limited their long-term success. One particularly intriguing area of study involves ancient fruits that appear to have been adapted for large animal dispersers. During the Pleistocene epoch, many regions were home to megafauna, large animals that could consume and spread sizable fruits. Some modern plants still show signs of this relationship, producing fruits that seem oversized for the animals that currently interact with them. There is a hypothesis that certain extinct plants may have produced even larger or more specialized fruits designed for animals that no longer exist. When those